Lying on the back, in whatever position you prefer. As I said, you can go up the wall, you can use bolsters, blocks, the ground itself, whatever works. We're gonna start with Baddha Konasana, or knees wide and feet together. You might want to support your hips, pardon me, with a couple of blocks or books or whatever you got handy. You want to think inner heels, outer heels, big toe mound, baby toe mound, all equally rooting as much as you can. You're trying to engage each ankle the same degree, each lower leg the same degree, each hip the same degree. Come down nice and slow if you haven't yet. Take those feet together. Find as much support as you want in terms of blocks or cushions or whatever you've got handy. Let your arms be heavy beside you. If you feel like you can lengthen your back body or your spine any amount, then do. If you can lengthen your neck any amount, then do. Finding a neutral pelvis, pubic bone lengthening, inner groins lengthening, inner knees. Maybe you can pull the femurs toward the hip sockets. Find that your canter's a little more. If finding the femurs makes a lot of sense, you can start to think of lifting the sacrum up towards the ceiling a little bit. Focusing on the stillness of the body, the movement of the lungs within that still body. When you're ready to do so, introduce the belly breath, filling the abdomen, the side body, the lower back. With each exhalation, follow the contraction of the lungs, emptying the abdomen, the low back, and continuing at your own pace. Never forcing, never straining. More rounds of breathing. Always feeling free to put a little weight on your body if you like. It can be a useful way to increase the work for the lungs. Returning to the natural breath. Feeling free to adjust the block if you're using the block. We're going to focus on the rib cage next. You can choose to rest the arms as you are now, or you can add a shoulder stretch, reaching fingers towards ceiling, lengthening the arm. For less of a shoulder stretch, you can try crossing the arms in front of you, taking the sides of the body, the armpit, just below the shoulder, walking around toward the shoulder blade area with the fingertips, or you can clasp opposite elbows, right to left, left to right, pull those elbows apart, find some shoulder push-ups, elbow push-ups. Both are good options depending on how you're feeling. If you're doing the opposite elbow option, you'll want that block out of the way for now. And then extension, no tension. Take the elbows toward the legs, toward overhead if you're doing the opposite elbow option. Hanging out in stillness if the arms are beside you, or if you choose to cross them in front of you. And then find a position that suits you. Perhaps forearms at forehead, over crown of head to rest on whatever prop you have handy, a block, a book, whatever you like. They can hover. They can rest on the floor. Change the position anytime you need. Attention to the ribs. Block there if you like. With each inhale, feel the ribs expanding out in all directions. With each exhalation, feel the contraction of the lungs as they empty. Without forcing, without straining, create as much movement into the lung tissue as is available to you. Remembering you can always change the position of the legs or the arms at any time. Perfect. Your next exhalation, returning to your natural breathing. Bring the elbows in front of you, lengthen the arms towards the ceiling. Remember, you can bring your knees together anytime. You can stay longer with the knees wide if it suits you. Then you'll switch the cross, left hand to right elbow, right hand to left, squeezing opposite elbows as you pull those elbows apart. Remember, our other option is crossing left arm over right, squeezing sides of body. Third option, arms heavy beside you. If you're doing the opposite elbow option, elbow push-ups, shoulder push-ups, pulling those elbows apart, thinking about creating as few wrinkles in the wrists as you can, rather than bending them a great deal, like so, for example, but lengthening those guys out. And then the tension, the sensation will likely travel to a larger joint, or larger muscle group, rather, that supports a larger joint. And you'll get a release where you need it. Then extension, no tension. Take the elbows toward the legs, toward overhead, alternating. Going toward overhead and staying there. Perhaps the forehead is a good place to stay. Maybe you hover overhead, maybe you rest on the ground, or you put any kind of prop there for support. Lots of options. You can always cross in front of you or choose to change the setup anytime. Attention goes to the upper chest, upper back, shoulders, maybe even the neck and throat area. Inhaling to feel the lift, the expansion in the chest, the upper back. Exhaling to feel the contraction as the lungs empty. Continuously focusing on the movement of the lungs within the space of the upper chest, upper back. I imagine that every single cell of my lungs could fill and empty in that particular portion of my body. With your next exhale, return to the natural breath. Inhale to bring the elbows in front of you. Lengthen the arms. Allow the arms to be heavy now beside your body. If you haven't yet brought the knees together, do so now. Bring the knees close together, have them touch, and then walk the feet apart. Have the outer edges of the feet parallel, spread the toes. Knees and thighs are squeezing together as we pull the ankles apart. Lengthening pubic bone away from us, trying to pull femurs toward the floor. Maybe the sacrum can lift up to the ceiling. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense. If it's available, start to think of rolling the groins. So I imagine that I'm internally rotating my thighs here, at least energetically, and I imagine that I could roll my inner groin, or my front groin, toward my back groin. That's a good way to put it. So imagining the thighs are rotating like so, toward one another and toward the end of the mat. If that makes sense, then you can equally think of squeezing the groins together and pulling them apart, and that increases that rolling of the groin. Anyhow, let your arms be heavy beside you, option one. If you wanted a bit more, you could go for a cactus arm, or you could play with placing the hands underneath the base of the skull. Perhaps interlacing them. That's a nice option as well. Big inhale to fill the lungs. Full exhalation to empty every last drop of air. And inhaling to fill the abdomen. When the abdomen is full, breath spills to rib cage. When rib cage is full, breath spills to upper chest and shoulders. Empty the lungs from top to bottom once they are full. Continue at your own pace. Focus on your breath moving into every possible portion of the lung tissue, back body, side body, front body. (360 degrees of breath. 5 more waves of breath up and down the spine. And remember, you can make adjustments anytime. If you want to bring your legs together, straighten out the legs, it's always okay to do so. Maintaining a neutral pelvis if possible. Return to the natural breath once again. Bending knees, walking feet to you, walking knees and ankles together. Draw the knees toward the chest, take the hands to the shins, rock a little side to side. Make a few circles, squeezing the legs. Change direction with the circles. Spreading toes. Going side to side once again. And coming back to center. One hand on each knee, knees away from you, away from one another, toward you, toward one another. You can choose to let the pelvis move here, imprinting and arching, or you can choose to place the hands on the ground and no longer allow the imprinting and arching to occur, but only allow that neutral curve of the lumbar to be present. No more, no less. Bottom back, ribs have to drop to the floor a little bit there too. And you want to think of pulling the collarbones apart, especially if you're in a more flexible body. Go the other way. Good, and bringing the knees and ankles together, squeezing them. Pardon me. Bring your left foot to the floor. Let's go right ankle to left knee, right foot flexed. Hips equal distance from shoulders and floor. If you want more, walk the left foot closer. Want less, walk it farther away. If you still want more, you can lift the heel. You can add a block under your foot. You can use your hands or your strap to bind. You can push and pull here to the extent that suits you. Elbows pulling apart. You want not more weight on right or left hip, and you don't want right hip or left hip closer to the armpit. Equal as best you can. Pubic bone lengthening. Lifting the armpit chest towards the ceiling, lengthening the neck any amount you can. Not allowing the right thigh to come toward you, but hinging that right knee and thigh away from you. Take 10 more breaths. Oh, and if you're binding and you wanted a little more hamstring opening, you could always work on hinging at the left knee, going back and forth or hanging out with a straight leg. But if you're in the more hypermobile boat with me, you want to have a little bit of a calf to shin action, and that left hip is still going away from the left armpit. And left foot coming back to ground. Draw the right knee toward you. Go hands or strap behind thigh. Push thigh away from you. Straighten your knee. Bend your knee a few times. Straighten and hold straight. Then go right hip toward end of mat. Left hip closer to floor. If you need more, your left leg can be straight. If you don't need more, stay still. Pointing and flexing. Right ankle. Toes reach to ceiling and back to you. Think inner upper arm to ceiling. Outer upper arm to floor. Pointing for circles. Go the opposite direction. And you're looking at the big toe mound, baby toe mound, equal distance from you. if you straighten out that left leg. You can always have it partially straight too. Have just the heel resting, no matter where that foot is. That's a great way to concentrate on whether that left knee is pointing up or whether it's externally rotating. Flexing your foot, curling your toes, pointing your foot, flipping your toes. Do a few more repetitions at your own pace. And then find a flexed foot and hold it flexed. From here, taking right leg towards left. Trying to keep the right side of the pelvis on the floor, not allowing the left leg to roll out. Left knee bent or straight. Somewhere in between is great. If you are straightening, you want to be dragging the heels to you as you take the hip flexors toward the end of the mat. Elbows pulling apart. I imagine that my knees are squeezing towards one another, but equally pulling apart as well. And right on back to center. Take your right leg over to the left now, or right leg to the right now. Left knee bent or straight. And it's not about how far you go. You're not trying to, if we go too far, the left hip will lift, and this is not going to serve us much. Better to have neutrality in the hip. So if the left knee needs to be bent, it's bent. We focus on pressing into the left side of the buttocks, squeezing with the left inner groin as we take the right thigh to the right. Right hip cuts toward the end of the mat. Deep breaths. Watch the rotation. Think neutral. And then come on back to center. Take 10 more breaths. And you can always take the hands higher up towards the calf, shin, foot, etc., whatever's appropriate for you. And you can change your mind about the left leg being straight whenever you want as well. You can bend it progressively at any point. Think big toe mound, baby toe mound level. Unless you're looking for a big ankle stretch, then you could purposefully move into the ankle and maintain stillness in the knee. Make sure the pinky fingers and the ring fingers are just as engaged as the others, whether you use a strap or just your hands. Good, bending left knee, bending right knee, bringing both feet to the ground, feet to hips distance apart. Place left ankle to right knee. Hip bones equal distance from shoulders and floor. Feel free to move around a little bit and find your neutral by finding asymmetry first. Pubic bone lengthens. Left hip toward end of mat, right hip closer to floor. You're hinging the left thigh away, lengthening left knee, left inner groin. Left foot maintains the flexion. Maybe you've got the outer edge of the foot hooked around the right knee. Maybe you can pull the knees apart, which I find really helpful in terms of getting the femurs and the trochanters and so on. If you want more, you walk your foot closer. If you want less, walk it farther away. You can add height underneath the foot. You can use your hands or your strap to bind. Trying not to let all the weight sink to one side or the other. Not letting one hip come closer to one armpit than the other. Not letting the lower back imprint, but lengthening the pubic bone away from you. Finding as much neutrality as you can. And then find stillness. And right foot coming back to ground. Draw the left knee toward you. Take your hands or your strap behind your thigh. Left thumb and forefinger dominant. Push the left thigh away from you toward the end of the mat. Left hip toward end of mat. Not allowing the left side of the body to shorten. Pushing into sole of right foot. Lengthening pubic bone to straighten the left leg. And you can feel free to hinge the left knee a few times, as much as you like. Check it out. How does it feel? Comfortable? Uncomfortable? If you need more, right leg can straighten. You can do this a little, a lot, somewhere in between. Experiment with it. Can you control your knee and your ankle? Does it roll out? Does it roll in? Can you find neutral with the right leg and maintain it? Calf to shin, front of the thigh to the back of the thigh. Inner thighs are squeezing, outer thighs are pulling apart. Pointing and flexing left ankle when you're ready to do so. Elbows pull apart to lift armpit, chest. But we don't let the ribs change in order to do so. We want to draw the front ribs together and then maybe even lengthen the back rib cage a little. So if I let my back shorten a bit, it looks a bit more like this. And if I focus on lengthening my back ribs, I can push into my skull and my elbows, or even just my skull, and lift my ribs, lengthen them, and then lift my head and lengthen my neck as well. And it'll feel even better, especially if you've got a more mobile spine. You got like hypermobile issues. Circles when you're ready. Remember, you can alter the straightness of the right leg anytime you like. Go the other way. And flexing, curling, pointing, flipping. Flexing, curling, pointing, flipping. Once more. Perfect. And then flex to hold. You can stay as you are, or if you are up for more, you can take the left leg towards the right. Not letting the left side of the pelvis lift. Trying your best to keep the left side completely rooted. Like so. So I could lift the left side, but then I lose a lot of the sensation that I'm looking for and a lot of the control and stability that I'm looking for. So I think left hip away from left armpit. I think thigh into hands or strap. Equally resist against the thigh. And then only move into the space that feels available. Right leg, I don't let it rotate out. I'm pushing firmly into the sole of that right foot or the heel if the leg is straighter. Either way. Taking the left leg toward the left now. Not letting the right side of the pelvis lift. It does not matter how far you go. What matters is stability in the pelvis, comfortable amount of sensation. Moderation is key here. Right knee can be as bent or as straight as you like. Big toe mound, baby toe mound, equal distance from you on that left foot if possible. Right shoulder doesn't lift more than left. And coming back to center gradually. Bending right knee, bending left knee, bringing both feet to the ground. Good, and then from here, let's roll onto the left side. Now you can have your left elbow bent and support your head like so. You can have the left arm straight and have the palm on the floor or the palm facing up. If you had, say, a block or a pillow or something like that for under the head, this would be yet another option. You could rest your head on that block, have the left arm extended, palm down, palm up, whatever was more comfortable. And then the right arm is free. All right, so all of those are good options. Want to have your knees bent, your legs stacked. You've got a 90-degree angle at the knee, a 90-degree angle at the ankle. Your right hand can either be on your right hip or in front of you for balance. If it's in front of you, then you want to have a strong elbow. You're reaching with the elbow, and you've got a little bend in the fingers as though you were kind of like trying to pull the fingertips toward the palm and have a little bend in the knuckles. You're going to lift the right leg, and your objective here is to keep the pelvis very still. So we're only moving into that right femur, right thigh. So ideally, your pelvis doesn't move at all here. And a great trick for this one to make it a little more, or to focus your mind a little bit more and to keep the neutrality of the pelvis is to put a block at a highest height behind the pelvis, and to ensure that you do stay aware of whether that right hip is traveling farther back than the left. Try to keep equal length on both sides of the body. Drawing the abdomen and the ribs toward the spine. You can even think of drawing the left ribs towards the right if that makes sense to you. And even though you're just lying on your side, it can eventually be just as challenging as a side plank if you focus the mind sufficiently on recruiting the necessary musculature. I think I said change direction, but if I didn't, change direction now. Good. And you can go as big as you like, as long as there's no pain. And as long as you're keeping that pelvis as still as possible. And you can always have your hand behind your pelvis too, like your hand at the base of the pelvis. That would be yet another way to focus on whether or not that area was moving. And the more you can isolate it, the better. And then give yourself a brief rest once you've done an equal number in each direction. And you could aim for 5, 10, 15 in each direction, whatever suits you the most. Integrity of movement more important than how many you do. And then lift the right leg. This time, make the circles as large as you like. And we're just going to go for 5 forward, 5 back. Big a circle as you like. See if you can keep equal length on both sides of the body, but feel free to let the right side of the pelvis go as far back as you like, as far forward as you like, drawing the abdomen and the ribs towards the spine. Once you've done your 5, change direction. A little clicking and popping is super, super normal if you're in a more hypermobile body. The more stable and strong you get, the less it'll happen. It might happen just once or twice in the day in each joint versus many, many, many times. When your 5 and 5 are done, take a little break. And then this next one, there are lots of different ways to do it. I'll show you a few. So, one way, if it's comfortable, is to straighten out the left leg and to bend the right knee. And then the right foot is pointing directly away from you. If that feels comfortable, great. It may or may not. If it hurts your knee at all, you can place the right foot behind the left thigh. Great option too. And I'll show you from another angle. Either right knee bent and foot in front of left thigh, or right knee bent, foot behind thigh. All right? And you can hold on to the right ankle if you want, or not, depending. Some of us might want to, some of us might not want to. Right hand can be on hip or in front of you for balance. You don't want to let the right hip go further back than the left if you can. Avoid it. And then here, we're thinking about lifting the left thigh up and down, trying to lengthen the big toe mound away from us. Straight up, straight down. The same concept if the right foot is behind the left thigh. But in this case, of course, the right hip is a little bit behind the left for sure. Same concept from this angle or this angle. So same idea, it's working the same area of the body. Be patient with your body, do not force, do not strain. And then 2 options after you've had enough of just the lifting and lowering is you can either hold up and pulse a bit, or you can try to do 5 forward circles, 5 backward circles. Like so. Alright. So up to you completely. Feel free to play with either of those. Nice. Good work. Very good. It's hard work, but it's really, really worth it. I promise. When you decide that's enough, you're going to flip over. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll start on that right side. You can have the right elbow bent, hand supporting the head at the base of the skull there. You can straighten out your arm and rest your head. Or you can have the right arm out in front of you and a pillow under the head, a block, actual pillow, whatever you happen to have would be great. If you're working with a more straight arm, I like to think of trying to lift my right ribs towards my left, as well as drawing my front ribs toward my back and so on. If the left hand is in front of you, you can use it for balance and have a bit of an outrigger elbow and really strong fingers as though you were dragging the fingers towards you to round the knuckles a little. Got a 90 at the hip and 90 at the knee. Left leg lifts slightly. Remember, your hand can also be on your hip. And we'll start with the forward circle. I like to internally rotate and then externally rotate when I'm working on the hip circle. Actually, especially when I'm trying to maintain a neutral pelvis, I find it even more effective. It might be different for you though. Whichever rotation is more comfortable, it's nice to start with that. So if you're more of an internal rotator, starting there. If you're more of an external rotator, perhaps you start there. I would encourage you to experiment. You've got plenty of time to do it, you might as well. Height or tall block behind you is a great option too. And as I said, you can do 5, 10, 15, whatever works for you. I love this stuff. It really makes my hips very, very happy, so I do a lot of it. And I recommend you do too, especially if you're a mobile body. Even if you're not though, honestly, it'll make you more flexible, it'll make you stronger. And if you have any back or SI joint pain, knee pain, any kind of hip pain, it'll probably go away pretty quick. Change direction if you haven't yet. And remember, you can always take breaks whenever you like. If you're doing it right, this stuff is really hard. If it's easy, chances are really good your pelvis isn't neutral, which is fine. It's still fabulous work. But the more neutral your pelvis is, the more you're going to get out of it in the long run. Don't be surprised if one side is significantly more difficult than the other. That's quite normal. Pardon me. When your circles are even, go ahead and give yourself a brief rest. And then if you've got a block behind you, you can get rid of it and put it beside you. And then again, we're going to do circles, this time really, really big ones. So left leg lifts, pelvis moves as much as you like, but try not to let the distance from hip to armpit change if you can avoid it. So think, I'm not letting that hip come towards my armpit, I'm keeping it away. 5 big circles, as big as you can. Again, I like to start with internal rotation. You might want to experiment with something different. And we're going to do so many circles today. I have so many different ways we can do it. Let's go the other way. And honestly, the more, different orientations or different ways you can work with the same connection, the better you're going to understand it. Whether you're doing a more traditional movement or whether you're breaking down a traditional movement to better understand its components. I think that's 5. If you haven't done quite 5 yet, you're going slower or faster or whatever, feel free to do a little more. And then when you're ready to, the last one we're going to do today is right leg straight, left knee bent. You can either place it in front of the right thigh. The foot can be, whatever's a comfortable distance for you. I tend to try and stack my knee and ankle more or less. You can clasp the ankle with the left hand or not. Sometimes it feels necessary to keep the foot there. Sometimes it doesn't. Left hand, can be in front of you for balance, or you can have it on your hip if you like. I find this one, it's nice to have your hand on the ground though, and get some finger strength going and some elbow stability happening too. Right leg goes up and down. Second option, left foot behind right thigh. Pushing into the foot, lifting and lowering. Same concept, very, very similar connection. Just looks a little bit different. It'll get into the same area though, I promise. Just allows you to move more easily into that hip. I shouldn't say easily, this isn't an easy thing to do, but it's worth it. And then you have a few options. You can either hold up if you like, you can keep moving, you can pulse a bit, or I would recommend circles, like so. And as I said, you can hold on to the left shin or left ankle if you want, hand on the ground, whatever you fancy. Trying to keep the big toe mound, baby toe mound level here. You could always work with a pointed foot too. That would be another way to challenge yourself, of course, if you needed it. When you've done, say, 5 and 5, give yourself a rest. Straighten out the legs, relax. Then from here, we're going to do one more bit of work with the hip circle on the ground, and then we're going to come up and continue onward. If you happen to have some sort of block or book or a blanket that you can fold up and put under just your pelvis, that would be great. If you don't, that's okay. Be on the ground. Or maybe fold over your mat a couple of times. Give yourself just a little bit of height under the pelvis. Even a folded up towel would do rather well. Anywho, height under pelvis if possible. 2 ways to do this work, and I'll show you 2 different orientations. Feet apart. You can either work with one leg at a time or both legs together. So you're pushing into the palms, shoulders, and fingers. If you could also do bent elbows here, just FYI. So you either lift the right foot, keeping the left knee very still, and you draw circles with the right knee, keeping a deep bend in the right knee, and you'd count, so you did the same number in each direction. Right? And then you'd switch. And if that feels like plenty, stay. Work with that. Wonderful. If you want more, you lift both feet at the same time. Pelvis is super, super still. And having the height underneath the pelvis increases that stabilizing action. As I said before, perfectly great to do on the ground too. You just think about dropping the ribs and lengthening the pubic bone. So anyways, you can also do both at the same time. Big circles, knees deeply bent, and make sure you do the same number in each direction. Like I said, I generally like to do internal rotation before external rotation. I think it feels better, but you might find that the opposite is true. You can also work with almost straight legs or straight legs. And again, the smaller the circle, the less you're going to feel. The bigger the circle, the more you're going to feel. So it's up to you how much you want to feel. Do not force or strain. Make sure you can still breathe easily. And since I can't tell, where you're at or what you're working on, make sure you count for yourself how many you do in each direction. And if you do alternate legs, make sure you're evening out your sides. Or if you know which side is weaker, you could do extra on that weak side. So you've got 10 more breaths to move around here as much as you like. Focus on keeping the rib cage stable. Focus on keeping the shoulders stable. Do not worry about how big the movement is. Focus on control, squeezing those outer trochanter's and outer hip area as much as you can. And you can do whatever you like with your feet, really. You can work with a flexed foot, spreading toes. You can work with pointed foot and squeezing the toes. I mean, they feel quite different, so feel free to play with that. Whenever you've had enough, you bring your feet to the ground, and you'll lift 3 times to get rid of the height or to move whatever height you have out of the way. Or if you didn't have any height, you can just straighten out your legs and hang out on the ground for a moment if you like. If you do have height, you're gonna lift, you're gonna lower, you're gonna lift, you're gonna lower 3 times, get rid of the block, and then lower as slowly as possible, trying to lengthen the spine as you lower. From here, we're gonna do one bridge pose or sechi banda. Feel free to do a supported version with the pelvis on the block if you'd rather. Otherwise, I recommend block or book or whatever you've got between your thighs, or imagine you've got something between your thighs. Outer shoulder to floor, inner upper arm to ceiling, lengthening pubic bone away from you slightly, equally lengthening flesh of buttocks away from you, and then lifting tailbone, lower back, mid back, upper back, coming up to hold when you're ready. In terms of arm options, they can be straight, they can be bent, you can spread the fingers, squeeze fists. Those of you that want more, you can always loop a strap over the front of the shin. If you happen to have one and you're like, oh, I really need more shoulders today, and I want to get into my hip flexors more effectively, and this is a fun trick, is looping the strap over the shin and then really working the elbow and the outer wrist toward the floor. You can even try to stack the wrists and get rid of the wrinkles in the wrist, which tends to move the tension a little more into the shoulder or whatever portion of your spine is needing a little stretch. Or perhaps more work, more stability. It really depends on the human. You can take up to 10 more breaths. Once you've decided it's sufficient, you lower very slowly. You never rush. Then you have the option of extending your legs. You could hug the legs. You could take the knees a little side to side. Those would all be good options. When you're ready to, you've exited, you've rested, you'll make your way up onto hands and knees. And there is no rush to get there. Take your time. You can have your hands directly on the ground. You can have your hands on blocks, whatever you like. Tuck your toes, get a good grip. Inner upper arm forward, outer upper arm back, elbows pull apart. You're rooting into the back of the skull a little. Round the back and tuck the chin, pressing the floor away. And lift the gaze, lift the sit bones, look up. Spine rounding, chin tucking, pushing floor away. Gaze lifting, sit bones lifting, looking up. And continuing at your own pace. Listening to the wrists. Adding some height underneath them or bringing them further forward or wider if you feel too much at any point. Try to pull those elbows apart if you're capable of hyperextending the elbow. Then neutral spine, pointed feet, try to drag the heels away from you, get a lift in the ankle, and circles with your hips. Go the other way. And then stopping with the circles, tuck the toes, bring the hips closer to the heels. You can stay here in a puppy pose, extending the arms. You can stack the fists or a block or your palms underneath the forehead. If extending the arms feels great, you can lift your knees if you want. There are lots of ways to practice downward dog. Some people are proponents of dropping the heels as much as you can. Some people say you should lift the heels and keep them lifted. Some people say you should walk the feet as far away from your hands as possible. Some people say it should be closer such that heels can rest. I would argue do what feels good on that day and try to find as neutral a spine as you can. No popping into any joints, especially knees and elbows, trying to pull them apart a little bit. Lengthening tailbone away from armpits and vice versa. And whatever you're doing, is your neck relaxed? Is there tension there? Could there be less tension there? Maybe. You can change your mind whenever you like, change positions anytime you fancy. let the knees be a bit wide, let the feet be pointed, bring your hips towards your heels, support your head. You can use fists, you can use palms, you can use a block. If you feel too much in the ankles, knees, uneven stretch in the hips, something like that, try putting a roll underneath the ankles. Whew, feels great. And you could use something like a blanket, for example, if you had it wide and long like that, and then had a bit of a roll of this shape and size-ish. See? It's quite nice. Really great if you tend to get cramps in your feet too, just FYI. I know that happens to some folks. Alternatively, if you were like, I wanted more of a calf stretch when I was here, you could always cozy up a roll of some sort in between the hamstring and the calf. And those of you that are looking for more calf opening, more hamstring opening, this is something I recommend doing frequently. It'll make a big difference in opening up your gastrocnemius and your soleus too. Five more deep breaths. And then when you're ready, coming out of your position, putting your prop beside you if you were using it, coming to the knees and palms once again. Slide the right toes away, the heel away perhaps, left toes away, heel away. If you happen to have a block or a book, you could use that in between your hands. If you had more narrow blocks like I do, you could put two beside one another. As I say, a book would work well too. It could just be lengthways. You want to measure your elbows so they're as wide as your shoulders. Squeeze whatever you like between your palms. You can also interlace your hands or have the palms on the floor too if you'd like. And then from here, with tucked toes, round your back, tuck your chin, press the floor away, lift the gaze, lift the sit bones, look up. And continuing at your own pace. Same movements as we did just previous, but on our elbows. And then neutral spine, pointed feet if you can, circles with your hips. Try not to let those elbows move. Try not to let your knees move, your feet move. I imagine that I've got a block between my elbows that I'm squeezing, and I imagine I've got one between my thighs that I'm squeezing. Going the other way if you haven't yet. When those circles are even, do one more cat-cow curl with tucked toes if you can, rounding the back, and then lifting the gaze and sit bones. Once more, rounding the back, finding that lift in the spine. And then think about lifting the chest at the same time, looking a little bit forward. And then you can choose to slide forward and back with the shoulders. With the knees on the floor, you can do the same thing with the knees elevated if you like. Another thing that's nice to work with here is stacking shoulders and elbows and sinking upper arm bones toward sockets deeply and then lifting up away, going back and forth. Finding that lift and then making sure you can move your neck easily. Just lifting and lowering the knees up and down is really nice too. If lifting the knees up is reasonable for you, you can walk that in a little, maybe lift one leg and do a few knee circles just like we did before. Let's say, I don't know, 3, 5 in each direction, whatever is reasonable. If any of you want to, you can. but obviously only if it's pretty comfortable. Anyways, 5 to 10 more breaths, moving or being still. And yet another option, especially if you're looking to release the neck, the space, I would say more behind the ear than the ear itself, but if there's tension there, it can release it into the clavicle as well. Those scalene muscles, is to hold the position, so not to slide forward and back, but just to hang out with the elbows and shoulders stacking. And then to look as far forward as you can without any strain, pulling those collarbones apart, but squeezing the elbows towards one another. And then to do the opposite, tucking the chin as much as feels good, without changing anything else. And this can be done with the knees up or knees down, it doesn't matter. It's just a really fabulous neck and back of skull release in particular. Really good for the superficial back line, which runs from the base of the big toe all the way up the back of the body and ends in your eyelid. So it runs just behind the ear as well. Or slides into that space. And the trick is to keep the rounding of the upper back as you look forward and keep the rounding as you look back. And if that feels really good, find a neutral neck for you. So not looking forward, not looking back. And feel free to take or leave this. You can feel free to keep moving or do trickier bits if you like. But find neutral and then see if you can look to the right. And then see if you can look to the left. And again, trying not to change anything and only moving into the space that feels really good. And same thing, can be done with the knees up, but I wouldn't do it unless, it's really easy to keep the knees up. Alrighty, and then once you're back to neutral, let's take a little rest. Knees wide, big toes touching, hips towards heels. You can stack fists for head. You can put a block or a book or a pillow under your head. I recommend something underneath the forehead and then sliding the skin of the forehead away from the bridge of the nose to the crown of the head. It's quite calming for the nervous system. Five more breaths. When your 5 breaths are done, coming forward, we're going to come into a lunge. So you can do this from standing at a wall. So if you didn't have any blocks, you could use a wall, have the feet at hips distance, step 1 foot back, bend your knees, maybe have your hands on your hips or your thigh, right? Lots of ways to do that. If you have blocks or you're comfortable entering a lunge from the ground with no blocks, I'll show you those 2 options. You can wrap your fingers around the blocks, knees and ankles, hips distance, right foot forward between the blocks, or, right foot forward on the outside of the blocks. No blocks. You can be on your fingers, your fists, palms, whatever works. You can step on the outside of the right hand, which I recommend. Maybe work the foot on the inside, maybe don't. It is not important where you go, right? Choose what suits you. Regardless, take that right foot forward, take the left knee back. You can tuck your toes and lift your knee if you like. You can point your foot, drag the heel away from you if you like. These are both good ways to do the same thing, right? They're good postures either way. It isn't important which one you do. Good, awesome. Lifting the abdomen, thinking right femur back, down and in, left femur kicking forward, pulling up and in toward the hip socket. I'll say that again, right femur draws back, down and in toward the pelvis. Left femur draws forward, up and in toward the pelvis. Neutral. feels really good, you have two options. You can either come more upright and balance, maybe interlace your hands and take the arms overhead, or clasp opposite elbows, or interlace the hands at the head, or something like that. You could just straighten out the arms and hold there. You could also go lower, in which case you could walk perhaps the right foot a little more to the right, maybe bring your right hand, right block if you're using them on the inside, maybe go lower, maybe get rid of them, hang out, you decide. 10 more breaths, abdomen expanding, abdomen contracting, not sinking into the joints, but lifting up away. And coming back up onto fingertips or blocks or whatever you're working on. Hips go back, foot goes back, left foot comes forward. And you can go on the outside, you can come on the inside, whatever works. Right knee can walk back, you can lift your knee, you can keep your knee on the floor, you can point your foot and drag the heel away from you. You can stay as you are, you can go lower with your blocks. You can come up higher to balance. You can have your hands on your thigh or your hips. Thinking left femur back, down and in toward the hip socket. Right femur pulling forward, up and in toward hip socket. You could say have the hands at the head, or clasp opposite elbows, or interlace the hands and flip the palms. Maybe straighten out the arms. Whatever worked for you. You wouldn't want your shoulders creep into your ears, though. You'd want to be able to pull those elbows apart to be able to move your neck comfortably. Whatever option you pick. You could also go lower. Perhaps bring the left foot on the outside if you haven't yet. You can go lower with blocks. You decide. Whatever option you pick, make sure it feels good. If it doesn't, question why you're doing it. And it can be difficult, that's fine. You just don't want more effort than ease. You want a significant amount of moderation in every practice. About 5 more breaths on this side. Try not to sink into the hips, but lifting those femurs toward the hip sockets. Lengthening the spine if that feels available to you. If the neck can be neutral, great. Often we look forward or we look down. Think ears equal distance from shoulders and a neutral curve of the neck. And when you're ready to come out of your lunge any which way you like, take a rest. You could take a child's pose, or you could sit, feet together, knees wide, clasping opposite fist with hand. So I'm going, in this case, I'm grabbing my left fist with my right hand, and I'm grabbing the fist itself, not the wrist, so that some space can be created in the wrist while I'm at it. I think of squeezing the ankles, pushing into the soles of the feet, and then lengthening the rib cage away from the pelvis. I press my knees out into my elbows. I pull my forearms towards me. I lift the armpit chest. And I think neutral neck. More breaths. Make sure you can move your neck easily. Could you look side to side if you wanted to? Could you shoulder check? Could you look up? Could you look down? You know, assuming you're doing this seated version. If you're on your in your child's pose, neck is as it is. When you're ready to exit, come out slowly. If you're seated, extend the legs in front of you. If you are in a child's pose, stretch out the feet briefly. And then come onto the seat. Extend the legs, pointing and flexing the ankles, a few circles. Go the other way. And then flex, curl, point, and flip. All right, so next we're going to look at a forward fold twist. Your legs can be a comfortable distance apart. You can bend your knees quite a bit, or you can work with straight legs. I'm going to suggest bent knees, like so. You can use some blocks or bolsters or whatever underneath your thighs if you like. You can work with flexed ankles, trying to have neutral ankles if you can, neutral pelvis. Hands can be behind you. Hands can come to shins. And just another 5 breaths, lengthening the spine. Thinking armpits lengthening away from hip creases. Good. And then coming up, from here I'm going to give you 2 options. So you can either take the feet together and the knees wide, supporting your hips as much as you like. Left hand to left knee, right hand behind you to twist, or left hand can come all the way to the right knee to twist. And you could twist to the right. So that might be plenty. If you want a little bit more, you can straighten the left leg and bend the right knee. Left foot is flexed. Just like so. Right? Sole of right foot against left inner groin. Legs a comfortable distance apart, don't force at all. Lengthening spine as much as you like. You can stay there. You can walk your left fingers towards the left foot. Right hand could be on the right knee to start, or right thigh. You could rest your elbow on the ground or on a block. If you wanted more, you could take the right arm outside your ear, take your hand to the base of the skull or to the shoulder. All good options. Not letting the ribs bulge if you're going for the side bendy twisty option. And if you go for the hand at the head option, it's nice to think about thinking about an external rotation of the upper arm, elbow pulling in and out, rooting into the back of the skull. All that good stuff. And when you're ready, you're going to come up nice and slow. If you're doing the Pavrita Janu Shasana version, you'd lift the right knee, extend, bend the left knee, bring the left foot to the right thigh. Maybe stay here, maybe walk towards the right. If you're doing the Baddha Konasana option, the feet are together, the knees are wide. This time the left hand will be behind you. Your right hand could be at your knee. Your right hand, or to your right knee. Your right hand could come to your left knee for a little more. You'd lengthen both sides of the torso evenly. You wouldn't want to pop your ribs. And then you twist to the depth that felt good. If you're doing the one knee bent, one leg straight variation, left hand can be on ground. Palm could be on ground. You could rest an elbow on a block at whatever height you like. You could rest the elbow on the floor. But what you want to avoid is bulging into the right side and shortening on the left, see? So what you want is to think right ribs to left, drawing the abdomen and the ribs toward the spine, and then trying to keep that as you find the elbow coming to wherever it wants to go. Right arm can come outside the ear if you like. You can take the hand to the head, etc. I may have gotten a little dyslexic there. If so, it would be, yeah, I think it would be right elbow coming down this time. So either on ground or on floor. It'd be left arm outside. Same concept though. And it's as though you're pushing your hand into something and you're equally lifting up away and sliding to lengthen. Ribs don't pop, ribs are connected. And there's no particular, depth that's good or bad, or better or worse. Just is whatever it happens to be. Wherever you are, think elbows are pulling apart, armpit chest is lifting. Maybe a few more deep breaths. When you decide the sides are sufficient, they're even, you unwind, you rest. You bring your legs to a neutral position, so straightening them out perhaps, relaxing them. Maybe a little bit of a bend is more comfortable. And then from here, we're gonna come onto our backs. Let me make sure here, yep. You know what, I lied, I've got one more thing you can try. So one of two things. So you'll do this on your back or on your knees. I'll show you two options, okay? So if you want to be on your knees, you can have the knees and ankles at hips distance. Draw the right knee forward into a pigeon, take the left thigh back, and then try to lift the left thigh up and maybe come just onto the fingertips. Take maybe 5 breaths or so, and then slide that left thigh back. Come sideways here. And you can hang out on your elbows if you like, lengthen that left thigh, maybe bend your knee, maybe move your ankle a little, or maybe hang out, all right? So that's one option. Second option would be to come onto the back, ankle to knee or legs together, either way. Hip bones equal distance from shoulders and floor, arms extended, and then legs go towards left. So either hovering, supported with block, or maybe resting on the floor. We'll see. Doesn't matter if it comes or not. Another great option would be legs together, hips a bit right, and then knees come more to the left. In which case the legs would be more stacked, right? And you're trying to evenly stack those joints. So feel free to choose either. Try to take another 10 breaths once you got there. Good, and then if you haven't yet, go ahead and switch sides gradually, not rushing. If you're on your back, take your time, don't rush. Always firing up the abdomen and the hips prior to moving, pushing into the arms firmly. The closer the arms are to your body, the easier it is to transition. If you're in the pigeon shape, left foot's on the ground, coming onto hands, walking the left knee forward. When you've got the space, the right leg goes back, you open up the back of the leg. Then you do the opposite. Feet and knees at hips distance, left knee drawing forward, left foot in front of right thigh, right knee walks back. And then see if you can lift that right knee up, right thigh up. Maybe stay on the palms, maybe come out to the fingertips. Lengthening armpit chest. About 5 breaths or so. You could play with, balancing with no hands if you wanted. And then slide the thigh back, point your foot, come to elbows, finding a lift in the abdomen, a pulling of the femurs. Maybe you bend the right knee, maybe you don't. You could stay still, you could move your ankle. Pulling those femurs in. And I imagine that I'm dragging that right femur toward me and toward the floor. and equally lifting it up away from the floor. So a little bit of everything. I'm drawing the ribs and the abdomen away from the ground. Take up to 5 more breaths in your twist or your pigeon. Whenever you decide it's sufficient, if your right foot is lifted, lower it down, come onto hands, walk the right knee forward, take the left leg back. If you're on your back, bring your legs back to center. And then from here, you can take legs up the wall or you can take Shavasana, whatever your preference is. I wouldn't recommend legs up the wall as Shavasana unless it's incredibly comfortable. Otherwise, it's preferable to do Shavasana flat on the ground. Leave a lot of space behind you if you're taking Shavasana. If you're doing legs at the wall, set yourself up gradually, don't rush. Create as little disturbance as necessary, moving yourself there. Otherwise, hands behind thighs, making a C with spine, coming down if you're not already on the floor. And then think neutral pelvis, pubic bone away from navel, a little bit of engagement in the abdomen and the glute as you slowly straighten the legs, externally rotating and bringing the baby toes toward the floor. The outer ankle, think of it being quite heavy toward the floor, as though the inner heel could be light, the outer ankle could be heavy. If you'd like, you can lengthen the rib cage and the skull away from the pelvis once again. Take the arms beside you, let them be heavy, wrists in line with waist approximately. Clenching and relaxing the fingers and palms a few times before letting the hands settle completely. Think about the weight in the back of the hand being right around the base of the middle finger here. That's where you want most of the weight of the hand. And eventually it almost feels as though you're hanging in a Shavasana hammock. And becoming as still as you can be, resisting the urge to fidget and adjust, focusing on your body, your breathing from the inside, concentrating on being still. Slowly beginning to deepen your breathing, waking the body from the inside, moving fingers, toes, stretching arms. Beginning to bend your knees and walk your feet toward you, rolling to one side and pushing yourself up, coming into any seated position you like. And I'll finish us off with a chant. We'll just do the closing chant for my lineage. So it's Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Shri Guravi Namaha. You can touch your hands in Namaskara or rest them. Deep breath. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Inhale. Shri Thanks for joining me. And if you have requests for a next class, just give me a shout.